The seed of faith is a profound concept rooted in the idea that within every individual lies an invisible but potent force, capable of transforming reality. According to the principles taught by Joseph Murphy and other pioneers of the subconscious mind, faith is not merely religious belief, it is a mental attitude, a deep conviction, and a creative force that shapes one's life from within. The seed represents a small beginning, yet it holds within it the full potential of a mighty tree. Similarly, the seed of faith, once planted in the fertile soil of the subconscious mind, begins to grow quietly but powerfully. It does not rely on immediate evidence or external validation. Instead, it relies on inner conviction, the certainty that what is imagined with belief will manifest in due time. Faith works through imagination, repetition, and emotional conviction. When you imagine a better life, a healing, or a success with unwavering faith, you are planting a seed. Every thought charged with belief acts as a command to your subconscious, and the subconscious never questions, it simply accepts and acts. This is the spiritual law behind all transformation. The seed of faith teaches that just like any seed, faith requires nurturing. Doubt, fear, and negative suggestions are like weeds that can choke the growth. That's why it's essential to protect the mind from negative influences and to feed the seed with positive affirmations, gratitude, and expectancy. One of the most powerful teachings in this idea is that faith precedes the evidence, not the other way around. You don't wait to see the results to believe. You believe first, and that belief activates the unseen forces of the universe to bring your vision into reality. Murphy would often say, "Believe in the good you seek. Act as if it were already yours." This aligns with spiritual teachings from many traditions. Faith is the key that unlocks hidden resources, divine guidance, and infinite creativity. Ultimately, the seed of faith is a call to trust the unseen, to speak with conviction, and to live from an inner place of knowing. When you truly believe, your subconscious goes to work and brings forth results in ways that are often mysterious and beyond logic. The seed of faith. Extended expert summary in English. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. This ancient wisdom encapsulates the timeless truth at the heart of the seed of faith, that every visible result in life begins as an invisible conviction within the mind. This concept teaches that faith is not simply wishful thinking or blind optimism. Instead, it is a dynamic, creative power. Faith is the inner certainty that what one holds in thought, with emotional conviction and clarity, will manifest in external reality. Like a seed, it starts small, just a thought, an idea, a desire, but, if planted correctly and nurtured patiently, it grows into something magnificent. Joseph Murphy emphasizes that the subconscious mind is the soil, and faith is the seed. Every belief you impress upon your subconscious, whether good or bad, takes root and grows. That's why conscious attention to your thoughts, words, and inner dialogues is essential. When you plant the seed of health, prosperity, or success through affirmations and visualization, and when that seed is backed by genuine faith, the subconscious begins to reorganize your external conditions to match the image held in your inner world. However, not all seeds grow automatically. Just like a gardener must protect a seed from weeds, drought, and pests, you must protect your faith from doubt, fear, and conflicting beliefs. Doubt is the greatest enemy of the creative process. If you plant a seed and then dig it up daily to check if it's growing, it will never take root. Faith requires patience, consistency, and emotional alignment. One of the most liberating insights in this teaching is that you do not need to know how your desire will come to pass. The how is the work of the subconscious and the universe. Your job is to decide what you want, believe in it without wavering, and act as if it were already done. When you live from that mental and emotional state, you're aligning yourself with powerful spiritual laws that govern manifestation. Murphy taught that your subconscious will respond to the blueprint you give it. That blueprint is shaped by your thoughts, feelings, mental images, and spoken words. Faith energizes that blueprint. Without faith, your desires remain dormant. With faith, even the smallest seed can grow into a life-altering reality. But look at the consequence that came right after that. Verse 16 says, "But on the 6th day, when the sun was hot, they prepared twice as much food. Those who went out to gather it gathered twice as much, since on that day they fasted, and all the people assembled on that day. So God told them that he would give them food every day except on the 6th day, when they were supposed to prepare twice as much food because the next day was the Sabbath. And then on the 7th day, he wouldn't give them any food at all." And that's exactly what happened. No food appeared on the 7th day. And then on the morning of the 8th day, the people went out to gather food, but they found none, and this happened regularly. Whenever the people complained, God would remind them to trust him, and he would miraculously provide. But he also told them that they couldn't trust in him unless they learned to obey him. Whenever they failed to obey, their problems seemed to become greater and their solutions seemed to become harder. But whenever they remembered God's faithfulness in the past and obeyed what God said, he helped them. Second, Moses also realized that the people were ungoing to follow God. If he did undo exactly what God told him to do, let's thank God for his provision and obedience to his word. As always, thanks for joining me today. We'll meet again tomorrow as we continue reading the Bible together in a year. So Moses was frustrated, he felt overwhelmed, he felt inadequate for the task, and he wanted to quit. But instead of giving in to those feelings, he chose to obey God, and God rewarded his faithfulness by telling him exactly what he needed to say to the people to get them to believe. Now, this is interesting because God had just performed 10 plagues on Egypt, including turning their water into blood, and Moses did so. He took a staff from the tent of assembly, struck the rock before the eyes of the people, and water gushed out enough for everyone to drink. So here, Moses did exactly what God told him. He spoke to the people and told them to take their staffs from their tents and strike the ground. Then, as everyone watched, he struck the rock and water gushed out for all of them to drink. Now, notice that the people didn't have to do anything. All they had to do was watch as Moses obeyed God, and, by faith, they believed that God would provide for them. And then he led them out of Egypt by the hand of Moses with a pillar of cloud and fire, guiding them every single step of the way. You see, the people didn't need to perform any special acts to receive the benefits of God's faithfulness. They didn't need to earn God's favor by doing certain things. They just needed to trust God. So when they complained and doubted, they were actually hindering themselves from receiving what God wanted to give them. In fact, earlier in the chapter, when the people complained about not having food, God provided them with manna and quail. But when they complained about not having water, God told them to strike the rock with a staff. And when they complained about not having water again, he told Moses to throw a tree into the water. Do you see the pattern here? The more they complained, the more difficult it seemed to become for them to put their faith in God. But whenever they humbled themselves and acknowledged God's authority, he helped them and delivered them. But still, even after all of this, the people doubted God's power and faithfulness. They questioned whether God would really lead them into the promised land, or if perhaps they would die of hunger or thirst in the wilderness before they got there. But God gave them a sign. He told Moses to take his staff and stretch out his hand over the waters of the Red Sea, which were in front of them, and then watch what happens. And so Moses did that, and the waters turned into blood right before the people's eyes. This was a visible sign from God, confirming that he was in control and that he was going to take care of them. He's speaking to us. So let's listen for his voice. Or maybe you planted a vegetable seed, and then you had an entire garden of fresh vegetables. Well, today we're going to talk about planting the seed of faith. And just like with other seeds, when you plant the seed of faith and you tend to it, it can grow into something truly amazing. Welcome to the Bible in a Year with me. We're reading Exodus 17 through 20 today. Now, after Israel left Egypt, they wandered around in the wilderness on their way to Canaan, the Promised Land. After crossing the Red Sea, they journeyed 3 days into the wilderness until they came to Marah, where they found some bitter water. Again, the people began to complain, saying there was no water to drink. But Moses cried out to God, who showed him a tree, which was probably an acacia tree, and he threw it into the water, and immediately the water became sweet. The people could finally drink it and survive. Next, they journeyed 7 more days to reach Elim, where they found 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. But once again, after only being in Elim for 10 days, they ran out of water. The people accused Moses of leading them into the wilderness to make them die of hunger and thirst. They were angry and upset, so they started complaining and murmuring against both God and Moses. So listen to how God responds to them through Moses in verse 6. Then Moses heard the people weeping, which probably means crying, and he asked God. In verses 7 through 9, God said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them to take up their staffs, those very ones they have been using to strike the ground, and bring them before God." All of these events with the water teach us an important lesson about faith. Now, we read further in the chapter about the people complaining about not having meat, and God gave them an abundant supply of quail. Let's remember that God is faithful and true to his word. So let's put our faith in him.